Welcome to the Hardpire. This is episode 30, What Changes Us. The group sat in silence on the floor of the wooden cart as it exited the city. Not a single word was exchanged as they crossed the river to Revim's north, nor when they passed the fields of barley and rows of olive trees that surrounded the city. Rena observed her companions, only occasionally meeting Roderick of Finn's gaze, the other three too busy looking out at the surrounding landscape. She waited for any of them to break the silence, wanted to allow them to address the run-in with Deacon themselves, but time kept passing, and no one dared say anything. Rena wasn't sure how long it would take them to reach Palmechi, but she guessed at least a couple of hours. The thought of passing all this time in silence, with no one addressing anything that had happened or that would happen, twisted something strange in her stomach. She couldn't stop her mind from spiraling as it imagined a million terrible things the crow could do to her sister, all the ways Deacon could be taking his frustration out on Jasper. She was certain the others had to be thinking about it too, that the silence came from everyone's fear of what could happen, but how could they break this fear if they didn't address it out loud? What's our plan once we arrive at the monastery? We won't know until we've seen what we're dealing with. Kalani looked out at the olive groves with one arm resting on the cart's side and her head resting on a fist. Rena wished she'd turned around and smile at her, reassure her like she usually did, but Kalani's body stayed as still as a statue. We do need to know what to do when we arrive in Palmechi, though. Right? I'm still figuring that out. Right. It'll be late when we arrive. It will. We'll need to find a place to sleep. And something to eat. We have a bit of money left from when we bought Logan's medicine this morning, but not much. I'm not sure it'd be enough to pay for all of our lodging. Maybe we can find another merchant who'd be willing to buy some of our trinkets. Or we can exchange something for a cheap room we can share. We still have some of the food Maniala gave us. Maybe that'll be enough for today. Do we go look for the crow tonight? Or do we wait until tomorrow? I think tonight. Makes sense. I don't think I'd be able to sleep anyway. Not with knowing Maya might be so close by. We'll need to scout the region first. The cover of night will be our friend. We'll make it easier to see the monastery from further away. We're getting close to a full moon. That should be enough to travel by. What do we do when we find the monastery? For now, just investigate the place from afar and come back in broad daylight when we've had time to figure out what the next best move is. Okay. I don't know if I can just leave Maya behind if I see her. You're staying in Palmechi, Rena. What? It's too dangerous. We don't have anything to defend ourselves with besides Asher's sword, and I'm not sure we can find any other weapons on such short notice. Finn doesn't even have his rapier anymore. We need to play this on the defensive and make absolutely sure no one notices us as we get close. But I can be quiet. I won't draw any attention to me, I promise. You can't just decide on your own who has to stay behind. It is kind of unfair that you don't want her to join in her sister's rescue. Logan, we're not rescuing anyone tonight. Not yet. Not until we know what we're dealing with. And you're also staying behind. No? Why would I stay behind? You're injured, and you've worsened our situation enough already. So now Deacon's shitty life decisions are my fault. Yes, they are. They definitely are if you are the reason why he's acting like this. I told him that his plan wasn't going to work out. It's not my fault if he doesn't listen. Just because I hire him for something and then he's too stupid to come up with a decent plan that isn't going to get him thrown into jail and then too stubborn to recognize that others might be right.
doesn't mean it's my fault when he obsesses over my family lineage and tries to extort money from me.
If you hadn't let this idiotic argument go on for this long, we wouldn't have yet another problem to deal with on top of the shit show we're already dealing with.
I didn't think he'd escalated like this.
Yes, exactly. You didn't think. What was Deacon talking about anyway? About your father and the train's construction? Logan looked over at Rena for a moment, lips parted, a pained expression drawing his eyebrows together. His jaw clenched and unclenched, mouth opening and closing, but no words came out. His eyes drifted away, one shoulder pulling up into a non-committal shrug, head shaking from side to side. From what I've seen from documents in the archive, the rail network's construction isn't advancing as smoothly as the North likes to pretend. Since their departure, Finn's sharp eyes had been observing them all very carefully, but most of all Logan. On any other day, Logan would have surely been elated by the attention and wouldn't have let it pass without a comment, but at that moment, he refused to even meet Finn's gaze. I don't know much. The documents aren't always easy to decipher, and there's all of these other rumors floating around. Not all of them are true, of course, but there's always a morsel of truth somewhere. The train line will run from Maghema Citadel in the east through Yodash and Manakala to Mashhad in the west. Some of it has already been built, leaving Maghema. I haven't seen how far they've come, though. And there's talk to connect it to the Daishegian Empire, but they'd have to find a way to get it over or through the mountain range north of Mashhad. I don't think anything concrete has been decided yet. That would be a tremendous undertaking. I'm not sure it would be worth it. Our relations with the Daishegian Empire aren't that great. Okay. I've also heard that they're planning on building a bridge to the Kanoraki Federation in Yodash. There are places where the sea's quite narrow there. Shouldn't be too much of an issue to build a bridge that could carry a train. They'll need to figure out how to run the train over a bridge anyway if they want to get it to Mashhad. It's pretty clear that the main objective of this project is to connect our kingdom to its neighbors and forgo maritime travel, for whatever reason. I don't think this train could ever be as interesting as the centuries of shipbuilding this kingdom has produced.
As spectacular as maritime travel is, it also takes quite a lot of time and depends a lot on weather conditions. This train would be able to complete the same journeys much faster and through any type of weather, and it would certainly benefit our kingdom's trade relations with our neighbors. It is no wonder we do not have a strong relationship with the Daishegian Empire, if their representatives either have to travel the entire width of our kingdom by carriage, or traverse the Federation to get to our capital. There is simply no easy way to get to Maghema by sea from the west. Granted, most of our relations have been with the East throughout our history, but we should not disregard any nations to the west of us. And I'm certain this train is not just being constructed to transport goods. It could also aid people in simply visiting our wonderful home. I've heard that they're ramping up their cultural exchange efforts in the north to entice more people to visit us. Especially Yodash has been quite revolutionary in their approach to presenting our kingdom's gifts to our neighbors.
Thank you both for all of this information, but what does that have to do with what Deacon talked about?
It's quite an ambitious project. Needs a lot of resources. Those resources have to come from somewhere, and the north doesn't have a lot of mineral deposits.
Okay.
So, from what I know, most of the ore is being mined in Red Hill in the west. Some people claim it's unfair Red Hill is being mined bare for a train line that will never reach the province. Others counter-argue that what benefits one part of the kingdom benefits us all. There are also rumors about unsafe working conditions and people being underpaid. I can't talk much about that though. I haven't been to Red Hill in a very long time, and any of the documents I've seen about those working conditions haven't stood out to me as particularly dissimilar to any other work contracts for such a big project. But I must admit, I never looked into it in any detail. I'm not sure how Logan's family plays into this issue though. Deacon's connecting dots that shouldn't be connected. I just wanted to know what was up with this train stuff, so I collected all kinds of information about it, and I asked him to get some documents from me. People say someone's giving Red Hill's governor a shit ton of money to keep the iron flowing as fast as possible, and I just wanted to know who exactly that might be. And now Deacon's somehow convinced that's my father.
And it isn't.
No, of course it isn't. You think I'd be sleeping in a tent if my father had enough money to build a whole train network?
It would have to be someone from nobility if those rumors are true. This is the Royal Council's project. They wouldn't let anyone they don't trust touch it, no matter how rich of a merchant they were. There's probably a lot of lower nobility they wouldn't let near the project either.
They certainly are also collaborating with the Royal Tinkering Institute in Markhammer, but only a very select group of people gets to work there. Exactly! And do I look like high nobility to you? Or smart enough to join the institute?
You're stupid and arrogant enough to be high nobility.
Oh, shut up, Asher. Listen, all I wanted was for Deacon to steal those documents so I could verify the identity of Red Hill's mysterious benefactor, and maybe blackmail him and potentially do a good deed while getting stinking rich.
So noble of you. I can see how Deacon made those assumptions about your father.
Asher, I don't know how Deacon came to the conclusion that I somehow have to be family with this guy. I'm not even sure he truly believes it himself. He probably just wants to intimidate me into giving him more money.
Kalani had a look on her face that Rena had never seen before, and it made a cold shudder run down her back. All softness and kindness had left Kalani, and had been replaced with cold indignation. You should have paid him his fair wage before sending him to do your dirty work.
I did, Kalani. I paid him just as much as I've always done. All thefts come with a certain risk of getting caught. He knows that, you know that, we all know that. This one wasn't any more dangerous than any of the previous ones.
Then you should have made sure the issue had been resolved before leaving.
I tried. You brought me to him. We talked with Kaz about the whole stupid situation. What more do you want me to do?
Was that when Rena and Roderick went to get the letter from my uncle? Before we left for the archives? When you came back all twitchy and nervous and wanted to leave as quickly as possible? Didn't seem like you'd made sure the issue had been resolved.
Why are you all so angry at me now? I'm sorry, okay? I made a mistake. I didn't know we were going to be gone for this long. I couldn't have predicted Deacon was going to obsess over it to the point he'd be chasing me across half the kingdom. It barely even makes sense, not for some money. I think he just doesn't like me or something.
Logan's right. He didn't know he was departing on such a long journey. He was just meant to help me get into the archives. Everything that came after wasn't exactly planned. And who knows when we'll be able to get home now. It's not your fault, Rena. It's nobody's fault. We're all just on edge. Who knows what'll await us? And there's nothing I hate more than not being able to plan ahead. Are you sure I can't come with you? No. The crow's too unpredictable. They don't adhere to the most basic social rule of not randomly murdering an entire town. And they don't even adhere to their religion's rules like Roderick said. If keeping the integrity of their god's memory or essence isn't even important to them, then it's impossible to know what they'll do next. We can speculate as much as we want about this ritual. We won't know what their next move is without seeing it with our own eyes. So the more eyes, the better, right?
Rena, I think Kalani's right. It might be too dangerous for us. We aren't used to these types of situations. Not like the others are.
If we always stay behind, we'll never get used to them.
I know. But today is not the day to gain experience. I'd stay in Paimeri with you, yes? We shouldn't bring Vincent along anyway. So someone has to stay behind no matter what. And there's much we have to discuss about these rituals before we can truly face the crow. even if we don't know exactly what they're planning.
What's that?
I wanted to delve deeper into these documents at the library, but there was no time. Truthfully, I could have stayed there until the evening, but alas, our circumstances didn't allow it. There's so much more we can discover through texts. Between the documents mentioning reincarnation and those mentioning how to make someone become a god, I'm sure we can find out what the crow is currently doing. It is truly fascinating, all the things these people can make themselves believe in.
You stole something from the library? Didn't know you had it in you, old man.
Oh, no, I'll give them back. There was just no time to read them all in great detail before we had to leave the city. If the three of us read them thoroughly while the others find the monastery's location, I'm sure we can decipher what exactly the crow's trying to do, how they're trying to do it, and then eventually reverse what they have already done.
As Roderick unfolded all the pages he had stolen from the library, dread crept over Rena. She became restless, listening to Roderick explain once more what her sister's body might be used for. She wanted to jump down and run to buy Mary herself, knew she could run faster than the horses could pull their cart, but how far could she really run? She turned her head and looked out at the vast landscape in front of them as the sun was low on the horizon, dousing the tops of the hills to their right in a golden orange. As Roderick explained his theories to the rest of the group, Rena scanned the countryside for traces of old ruins, for any light or smoke emerging where no town was. But of course, their search couldn't be so easy. What would Maya look like if the crow's ritual succeeded? Would she still be Maya? Would her hair have grown? Would it reach her shoulders already? Or had the crow cut it short? Would she still have their mother's bright hazel eyes, or would Tavomoda take that away from her too? Would her soft copper skin be ruined by those horrible green veins that had spread over Captain Silek's face? Would she still remember Rena? Roderick had said the vessel would need to be empty for the reincarnation to work, and the crow would certainly not be satisfied with a partial reincarnation. So they'd need to take everything that made Maya her sister out of her body. All the memories of their hometown, of their family, of their bakery, all the days they'd spent at school, or the nights they'd spent whispering to each other. It would all be gone. Would Rena be able to survive that? To see her sister's body and know she wasn't her sister anymore. To maybe even have to fight her sister's body to stop the crow from doing whatever they wanted to do next. And Kalani wanted to stay behind tonight. To sit in a cold room in a tiny town and wait for the sun to rise before going to save her sister. To read through all these possibilities of what might be happening to Maya and do nothing about it. To not even make sure her sister was truly still her sister and not just an empty body. Rena's throat closed up, a thick lump keeping her from breathing as a tear ran down her face and obscured her vision. Rena sat on one of the 3 beds that had been crammed into the small, barren room, her gaze fixed on the lantern hung outside the inn that could be seen from their one dirty window. Kalani had won, after all. In truth, Rena never had a chance to join the search for the old monastery. Everyone was too worried about her. Everyone thought her too inexperienced. And they were right, in a sense. She had to admit that. She knew nothing about this type of work. But did Finn? He had grown up surrounded by scrolls and regulations, not hills to sneak around on. Did he know so much more about this than she did? He wasn't that much older than her, certainly no more than 5 years. Had he truly learned so much in those short years that she'd never considered? But what was to be done about it? 5 adults had decided she'd stay behind in the safety of this rickety inn, so she did. The fire flickered faintly behind the lantern's milky glass, burning its oranges and yellows into her eyes. She wrung her hands until the skin burned, then she proceeded to dig her nails into her palms. She could hear the crackling of the lantern's fire. She knew that was impossible, that such a faint sound would not be able to travel through walls, not even walls that let in all the cold from outside. But she could still hear it as if she was sitting next to a bonfire. She squeezed her eyes shut and turned her head. Kalani, Asha, and Finn had left just a few minutes ago, and Roderick had left not long after to let Vincent run through the town that was barely more than a tavern and a few long buildings. Only Logan remained in the room with her. He was lying on the bed next to hers, arms folded beneath his head, eyes shut tight, a single bead of sweat running down the side of his face. Do you think they're doing okay?
They're fine.
You're not worried?
Worrying isn't gonna help anyone right now.
I don't think I can just switch it off like that.
Just think of something else.
How?
What's your favorite thing to do during the summer?
My favorite thing to do? I always liked swimming in the ocean. In the late afternoon, when the stones were still warm and the water was just the right temperature. When my parents wanted some time alone, I'd take my siblings to the ocean. My friend Tala would join with her siblings, and sometimes my cousins would come and we'd all swim together. We don't really have beaches near Ocean's Throw, not like they have here. It's a lot of cliffs and stones, but we'd know where the water's calmest and the ground hurts the least to walk on. But that's all over now. What did you like to do as a child?
Oh man, as a child? Tough question. Mischief. Generally a lot of mischief. And once my brother was old enough, I'd teach him the mischief. But he was never as good as me though, so he'd always get caught. He was a cute child though, so I wouldn't actually get into trouble. And he was loyal enough not to rat me out. Not a bad kid all in all.
What's his name?
Vic.
Do you still see him sometimes?
Nope. Haven't seen him in almost a decade probably.
Why not?
It's complicated. Family relations don't mesh well with this type of life if you weren't born into it.
You weren't?
Not really. Not into this specific. Cares and rancor and all that. Not that my parents are the most upstanding citizens either.
Do you miss them?
My parents? Not even for a second.
Your brother?
Sometimes. But it's for the best. And I get why Deacon thinks my father has to be this big dark secret. But he's just your garden variety crook from the north. Nothing special about him. I just don't like talking about him, because the less I mention him, the less likely he is to find me. That's really all I want to avoid.
That bad?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Like I said, it's been a decade. Not sure he's still thinking about me. In the beginning, I was quite scared. Didn't really know what he'd do if he got to me, but I haven't really been careful these last few years, and I'm still alive, so who knows if he ever actually bothered to look for me.
I'm sorry.
Nah, don't worry. I've got my own life now. Most days I don't even think of him either.
And your mother?
I prefer not to think of her. I really can't tell what she's thinking, if she misses me or not. She always preferred my brother anyway, so probably doesn't need the unruly son back.
I'm really sorry.
You don't have to be. Life's just like that sometimes.
I don't like just sitting here and waiting.
Yeah, not if we dive headfirst into sadness with every subject we start. Next you'll ask me about all my failed relationships. Maybe we can play a game instead. Wouldn't that be fun? Maybe Round and Round the Council? You know that one? One of us thinks of the next High Lord or Lady to die, how they met the mysterious end, and which one of their siblings or cousins is responsible for it. And the other one has to ask questions and figure out the conspiracy.
I don't know much about those families.
Right. Something else then. The cat Stunky? But we need to be at least 3 people for that one. Maybe once Roderick's back. Isn't there A game about the old gods too. Faith Unbound, something like that. I'm sure Roderick knows all about it. He probably knows so many games if he's been traveling around the kingdom talking to people. What did he call himself? Scribe of the lands? Are games part of the lands?
What if we go find a monastery too?
Rena.
Just to make sure Kalani and the others aren't in trouble. I feel like I'm going to burst out of my skin waiting here, not knowing what's happening to them, not knowing where they are and what the crow's planning or doing, not knowing if they're safe or hurting. Don't you feel awful sitting here, safe and secure, while any number of things could be happening to them?
And what do you want us to do about that?
I don't know. I'm sure there's something we could be doing. There's safety in numbers, right?
Not in this situation. Not when there's probably like 50 or 100 of them and 6 of us.
But at least we know what's happening. What if they're already dead? What if we wait until the morning and they don't come back, and then it's noon, and then evening, and they're still not here? How long do we wait? And then what? We just go back to Kaz and tell them Kalani's dead? We tell them we failed and let their wife die?
Rena, Kalani knows what she's doing. She isn't going to storm the monastery without telling us about it. They're just checking the place out so we know what we're dealing with. She'd never confront anyone without being 100% certain she has the upper hand.
But what if something happens? What if the crow spots them and they get dragged into a fight?
I reiterate, what do you want us to do about it? You have no fighting experience, and my stomach was ripped apart less than a week ago. I know I'm a phenomenal actor, but this shit hurts.
I don't know. Something. I'm sure there's something we can do. Throw rocks or distract them or call for help. Not just sit here and do nothing while all our friends die. And who knows what they're doing to Maya? Or what have they already done to her? Empty her of who she is so they can put their god into her body? Make her someone she isn't? She's the only family I've left. Wouldn't you want to save your brother?
Don't.
Stars, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I can't stay here, Logan. I'm so sorry, but I just can't. And either you come with me or I go on my own, and I really don't like forcing this choice on you, but I can't stay here. And at least if I tell you about it, you'll know where I've gone, and you don't panic thinking someone got to me, and you can take your own decisions whether you want to join, which I don't think you should, considering your injury, but also I'm terrified of going alone, and I wish I didn't let Kalani convince me to stay here, and I had just gone with them, because why does Finn get to go and I don't? And I know Kalani's smart and she knows what's best for us, but she doesn't know what this feels like. And who would I be if I stayed here safe and let everyone else get hurt again? So, yeah, I'm leaving, with or without you. I'm sorry.
That is such a bad idea.
I'll be careful, I promise. I can't live with the not knowing. I'm not going to engage with any of them. I know that I can't fight. You don't all have to remind me of it all the time.
I'm not letting you leave on your own.
Are you sure? Can you walk for that long?
I guess we'll find out, but you're not stepping out of this room unsupervised.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was getting bored anyway.
We should let Roderick know where we're going.
We really shouldn't. He needs to stay here with the dog anyway. And he's got his ritual to investigate or whatever.
He'll worry about where we've gone.
We can leave him a note. I'm sure he's got something to write in one of those bags.
Do you think he'll be upset we left without him?
Rena, you're one of us now. You lie and you manipulate and you weasel your way into getting whatever you want. You don't have to worry about others' opinion anymore.
I'm not one of you, whatever that means. I don't lie to my friends, if it isn't strictly necessary. And I don't manipulate anyone. Do I?
What do you think you just did? Rena, it's fine. I'm proud of you. You're finally learning something from me.
Don't say that.
You'll be the perfect thief in no time.
No, I won't.
Don't worry. You can become an honest thief. You know, Do a good deed while getting stinking rich and all that.
That's not how it works. That's still bad. I don't want to steal from anyone.
You'll change your mind soon enough. Now come. I'm sure there's a sword that's just waiting to be stolen somewhere in this hovel.
Logan! They did not, in fact, find a sword that was just waiting to be stolen. But they did find 2 kitchen knives that almost looked like daggers, if you squinted at them from the right angle. Rena wasn't sure what to do with the knife Logan gave her. She should have been used to holding it. She'd cooked enough meals in her life, but having taken it out of its usual environment, she'd somehow lost the ability to carry it naturally. She held it in front of her in both hands, before remembering that her dress had pockets, but that turned out not to be the greatest solution either. It weighed her dress down unevenly, threatening to tear a hole in one of the only pieces of clothing she had, and banged against her leg as they snuck out of the town that was barely a town. But where else did people keep a weapon? Were they only meant for people who wore trousers? But simply holding it in her hands felt too threatening if anyone ran into them. Rena's eyes shifted around nervously as they walked between these strange buildings that seemed more like warehouses than homes. None of them, besides the inn Rena and Logan had come from, had windows, and the further they got from the inn, the emptier the streets got. She almost hoped they'd run into Roderick so they could tell him what they were up to after all, uneasy with leaving town with only a short note explaining where they went. But luck wasn't on their side. Even when Rena strained her ears, she couldn't hear anyone else's presence, not even inside these strange buildings. She'd never heard of Paimeri before, but that hadn't astonished her when Kalani had mentioned the town that afternoon. Kalani had recalled it being no more than a tavern and 2 farms, and Rena was sure she didn't even know all such small towns in Velashta. But she hadn't seen any farms yet, just the aforementioned inn and these strange long buildings that looked like they could fit into Revim's merchant district or perhaps the docks. What was this town? Rena wasn't even sure anyone lived here. At least she hadn't noticed any homes yet. Were these long buildings simply for storage? If so, why were they out here and not in Revim where they could be kept safe?
So, what now? Where do we go?
Not sure. North?
North. Reassuring.
Kalani didn't have a map either.
Kalani's also smarter than the both of us. Combined.
I don't know, Logan. I didn't exactly plan this whole thing out. We'll just walk around until we find it. Walking already feels much, much better than sitting in a tiny room on a smelly bed.
Right. Just walking.
You didn't have to come.
I did, Rena. I really, really did.
They walked until they couldn't see Paimeri anymore, and only the moon guided them. Rena tried to scan the ground for any traces or footprints Kalani and the others might have left, but she'd never tracked anything down before, and learning a new skill was much more complicated by moonlight. She'd hoped they'd be able to see the monastery from far away, that the light would betray the crowd's whereabouts, but Rena and Logan had been walking for over an hour and still hadn't stumbled upon it. They'd seen lights in the distance once and had enthusiastically walked closer until they'd realized that the place the lights emanated from was much too big for an abandoned monastery and was, in all likelihood, simply a regular town.
You know what I just thought of? What if we don't find our way back to Paimeri?
Don't say that.
We've been walking for a while and we haven't found anything yet.
We'll find the monastery.
Sure. What if we don't?
Then we go back the way we came from.
Do you remember where we came from?
If we don't find it, we'll just go back to the other town we saw and get back to Paimeri in the morning. Or we simply sleep out here somewhere. Something moved in the corner of Rena's eye, and she automatically spun around, but couldn't catch what it'd been. There probably were plenty of wild animals around them, maybe even dangerous ones. Who knew if sleeping in the wild would be such a good idea? Rena slipped her hand into her dress's front pocket and wrapped it around the handle of the knife.
Look, I'm all for just storming out without a plan and letting luck decide where we're going. Life would be horribly boring without spontaneity. But I wish luck would consider the fact that all the medicines vanished from my body, and walking isn't exactly the best activity for people with wounds across their bellies, and I'm cold and I'm tired, and walking really isn't that exciting.
You're worse than Valerio when he was an infant.
When exactly do we admit that we have no idea what we're doing when we should simply head back?
I don't know either, Logan, but we haven't been out here for that long. Have you never had to walk long distances before?
Sure, but not in the dark while I'm bleeding out.
You're not bleeding out.
Wait.
Hoof marks!
What? Oh shit, hoof marks!
Rena frantically looked around, trying to find a logical explanation for why there would be a trail of hoof marks in the wild. The trail was too narrow and well-trodden to have come from wild horses, and it was too broad to be from a single traveler. The path had been used more than once, but not often enough to become an actual road. They were too far away from any towns, and no merchant would lead their horses over such a rocky terrain for no good reason. So why were these tracks here? Rena looked out over the distance, trying to determine in which direction they should follow the trail, when she saw something else. Orange fur, glowing against the dark soil, more than should have been possible in the moonlight.
Finally.
What? Why are you here? What do you want?
It is time.
Time for what?
Rena?
You see it, right? Tell me that you see it.
The fox? Yeah, I see it.
Do you hear it? Can you also hear it talk? It speaks directly into your mind. I don't know how it does it.
Yeah, I hear it. What is it?
I don't know. It's everywhere. Everywhere I go, it shows up and just runs away. And now it started talking and telling me to hurry up. And I don't know what it wants.
Maybe my wound's worse than I thought. I didn't think I had a fever, but...
You don't. It's actually there.
Your time is running out.
Why do you always have to be so mysterious? Why can't you just tell me what's going on? Are you helping me? Are you working with the crow? What is this? What are you?
I can show you the way.
The way to what? The monastery? Why can't you just say that? Why should I follow you when I'm not even sure where we're going?
Trust me. Are we going to follow it?
No. I'm not going to reward this kind of behavior. We can follow the hoof marks on our own.
Okay. Left or right?
Right.
So, where the fox went?
Shut up. They walked for what felt like another hour. The further they got, the more Rena started to lose hope. Started to think that maybe following the hoof marks had been a bad idea. That not following the fox had been the wrong choice. But she couldn't think about all that for too long. She had to focus on the crow and Kalani and her sister. Trust in her own decisions. Simply going back to Palmeri wasn't an option anymore. It would feel too much like abandoning them all over again. Logan grabbed her arm and stopped.
Wait.
Rena slowly looked around, her entire body stiff, until she saw a faint light in the distance to their right. Is that it?
I really hope so.
Okay. Let's get closer. They approached slowly, eyes glancing in every direction to make sure they were truly alone. More lights joined the one they'd seen as they advanced, but not enough to signal they'd simply found another city. Whatever it was they were approaching, it was on top of a hill, partly carved into the rock. Stone walls, covered in lichen, appeared in the dark. They clearly showed their age, as parts of them were missing and had fallen to the ground. At first, Rena thought the structure was covered in strange dots, but as they got closer, they revealed themselves to be the same crudely carved bird figurines that Rena had found in Ocean's Throw. Her heart skipped a beat at the sight of them, the memories of the fire flooding back in an instant. She had to press on, no matter how scared she suddenly found herself. She was so close to her sister now. Logan kept a hand on her arm, their backs hunched as they circled the old monastery. Rena hoped with all of her might that they'd run into Kalani or Asha or Finn, that they would find someone who could tell them what to do now that they'd reached the crow's hideout. She wasn't sure she could figure it out on her own. All she wanted was to run inside and find her sister, but she knew that was a bad idea. They had to be sneaky if they wanted to get back to Palmeri safely.
Come this way.
Rena's head spun around to the fox that was sitting on a stone to their right, eyes glowing in the dark as it stared at her. Only 2 paths lay in front of us this week. On the first path, Rena and Logan follow the fox into the monastery. On the second path, Rena and Logan find their own way into the monastery. You can cast your vote by going to the show's Twitter page, the TUMBLR page, or on thehardpire.com. You have until January 26th to cast your vote. As always, if you like this podcast, consider leaving a review or supporting it on Ko-fi or Patreon. You can also get the novelisation of the first season as an ebook and paperback from most major retailers. You can find transcripts for each episode, character art, and a map of the kingdom on thehardpire.com. The intro music is Lonely Dusty Trail by John Prestone. The Hardpire is written and produced by me, Audrey Machter. Thank you for listening.